So, good evening, everyone. Welcome. It's good to see you all again, and thank you for joining us. So, again, this is the Young Finance series. This is session 3. And today we're talking about going to the bank, getting ourselves ready and prepared for banking. But first, I want to again welcome you all and tell you that we're very happy for you all joining us this evening for session 3. And a big thank you to Pastor Taylor, Rebirth Christian Fellowship, for the platform and the opportunity to present. And again, thank you to Eric Lusain of Lusain Funeral Home for your vision to formulate this series and asking me to be a part of the formation of the sessions. I'm so happy to partner with both of you. And thank you for your commitment to this series to educate our young adults. Eric Lusain is also the underwriter of this series, and we're thankful for his resources. So just to recap, always remember that you can register each week. We have 3 more sessions after this one. Register each week at www.rebirthchristian.org/young finance. That is www.rebirthchristian.org/young finance. Also, at that time, you can submit any questions that you have, but also remember that while we're on this call, that in YouTube, you can also put your questions in the comment section. And at the end of our talk today, we will try to answer a few questions if anyone has them. Okay? So we will move forward right now. We're talking about let's go to the bank. So many of you, I hope, have been preparing your budgets and getting them ready and understanding your income versus your expenses, but also thinking about your savings as well. Last week, we had an Excel spreadsheet, a template that we used to help you formulate your budget. And that would also be some questions I would like to take this evening. If anybody had any questions while they were trying to formulate their budget or using the app, please ask those questions so I can help you move along with preparing your budget. So we'll get right to it and talk about what banking options you have. And many of you I know would use a checking account, use debit cards of some sort, and maybe even have a savings account. So we did touch on a couple banks. Just Christian talked a little last week about savings accounts and options that are out there. But even to some degree, we discussed checking account options as well. Now, let me just make sure I put this disclosure and disclaimer out there that we are not saying that one bank is better than the other. We're just discussing what options are available to you and basically how to kind of shop for the bank that works best for your banking needs. So there's a few questions, and I hope that you all are kind of prepared to take some notes this evening. But there's a few questions that you would really need to ask your own self as you think about your banking needs. And you really want to know what are your personal banking needs. So is the location of the branch important to you? What type of accounts do you want to open up? Would you like a checking account? Would you like a debit card? Would you like a savings account? And maybe what type of features would you like for that checking account or those banking accounts to have? Would you like for them to have transfer capability? You could also be, if you're like me, the quality of customer service is important to me. So how well do they handle face-to-face phone inquiries? How well do they handle that? Do you feel that they take good care of their customers? But there's also many other options that a bank can offer you, and that would be loan options. We had some comments in the first week talking about getting prepared for purchasing cars, even down to purchasing homes. So you may be interested in a bank that has good loan programs. But don't be far removed from also knowing that banks offer retirement accounts as well. Oh, I know y'all are saying we're only 17 to 25 years of age and retirement doesn't apply to me. Retirement applies the day you start working. You should be thinking about your future and definitely thinking about retirement. And so you may be interested in some sort of an IRA account or a retirement account. Those may be some things and some questions that you want to ask yourself. And I really want to change your mind during this series that you would want to begin thinking about your retirement. So I know you're all thinking, wow, it's a lot to think about. It's a lot to plan for as I think about what I need from a bank. But there's also going to be some things that you're going to have to take with you to that bank to open the account. And again, when I say take with you to the bank to open an account, this also refers directly to if you want to do an online bank. There's going to be some information that you would need to provide to that online banking institution. You will have to have some form of a valid identification, whether that is a driver's license or a state issued ID. Your mailing address. And hear what I said when I reference mailing address, because your physical home address really may be different from your mailing address. So you want to be sure that you address that with your banker when you speak to them. Do you want your statements mailed to a different address, maybe to even a PO box, especially if you think you may be moving around a little bit in the next few years, post-graduation or marriage or roommate style living. There's many reasons why you may be a little bit more fluid during this time with your physical address. Valid phone number, your social security number. And you may also need to be prepared to identify a beneficiary. So I know many of you are saying, why would I identify a beneficiary? But it's just for the safety and security of your accounts in the event of your death. I know you're not thinking about that either, neither am I, but it's just a part of doing business. So it's very important to begin thinking about identifying who you would like to trust with your finances in a situation like that, okay? So once you meet with your banker or talk with that person online representative who is opening up your accounts, you may want to ask some questions. I think it's very important for you to ask questions. I think what we're finding out a lot of times with our young adults is their misunderstanding of banking transactions, the misunderstanding of the fees that may apply, maybe not understanding statement cycles and such, or even what's the best type of account for you. So I encourage you, first and foremost, when we talk about the type of an account, if you're talking about a checking account, there are lots of college accounts. So if you are a student, you should be looking for a bank that has a college account. You should be looking for a bank where there is minimum to no fees on a monthly basis or per statement cycle. And let me tell you why I say per statement cycle, because it's based on a 30-day cycle. However, the 30-day cycle could end on the 15th of the month or the 20th of the month. It's just not necessarily a 31-day or 30-day monthly cycle. So therefore, you could actually get a statement and your cycle ends on the 15th, the 20th, or any other day of the month. So limited fees at this time. Free accounts is what I'm asking you to look for. And free meaning that you meet all the terms. It could be that you need to meet the terms of that checking account. So let me back up with when I say that. When I say terms, it could be that there's a fee associated with the account if you don't do electronic banking statements. So if you're required to sign up for electronic banking statements to avoid a fee, then you will have to go online, set up your banking account information, set up an online login and password, and select electronic statements to avoid that statement cycle fee. So keep those things in mind. That's why I'm saying you gotta ask some really important questions to avoid banking fees. And why this is important is because remember, you have a budget that you are working from, and your budget doesn't accommodate or give room for error for bank fees. So we do not want to spend any of our extra dollars on bank fees. So you're looking for accounts that have no minimum balance. Maybe an account, definitely an account with no monthly fees. Typically, college student accounts are 5-year accounts. You can have that account for 5 years, and most often there's no minimum balance, there is no monthly maintenance fee, and you likely only have to qualify for that by having a college ID and registering for online bank statements. Know the restrictions on the account. It's important to know the restrictions, especially during this building phase of your finances. Again, too many fees can make the budget just go completely whack in 1 month. I mentioned this already. Know your statement cycle. That's very important for you to know. What day your statement ends. And another question you may need to ask the banker is the access hours of the bank. If you're a person who wants to be able to access the branch, either through drive-through or indoors, you want to know what those banking hours are. And most always, the banking hours for indoors is very different from the banking hours for the drive-through. So be sure to ask those questions. Okay, let's talk about the fees for the services, because this is really, really important. I know I've touched on it, but one of the things I want to really speak to is overdraft fees. Most banks, they average about $36 per transaction. I advise you to opt out of automatic payment of debit card transactions, because debit card transactions, to me, seem to be the one thing that gets young adults in trouble with their checking accounts, because it makes it more difficult for you to keep up with your running balance. And what I mean by opting out of overdrawing when you use your debit card is that when you swipe the card, if the funds are not available, it will decline the transaction. If you don't opt out of that, when you swipe the card, it will approve that transaction. And if you don't make the funds immediately available before the transaction post, you will receive an overdraft fee for that. So think about it. I don't know about you all, but I swipe my card sometimes for just $3 or $6, $36 for a $6 transaction. That's a lot of money to pay. It's a lot of money to pay. So think about opting out of approving transactions when your account doesn't have sufficient funds. Another reason for that is banks look at the history of your account. So say you're that person who is interested in a car loan at some point in time. You're interested in a mortgage loan down the road, and you have a banking history with that financial institution. They look at your transactional history to determine if, first and foremost, how much money comes in and out of this account on a regular basis. Do they manage their money well? Do they have a lot of fees related to overdraft fees, which they consider irresponsible use of your funds? So you think about that. You don't want to go down that road with having a lot of overdraft fees. It's not a good practice. If you don't have the money in the account, it's just no money to spend. Now, in the event that there is an emergency, that is something totally different. But if it is not an emergency, please don't choose to get a McDonald's meal and overdraw your account and pay a $36 or so fee for that. So just kind of wanted to make sure that we're kind of all on the same page when it relates to why not having overdraft fees and how that really can, just throw your budget all the way off each month. ATM fees, let's talk about that. A lot of times these banks charge ATM fees. And I know we want to go get our cash out the bank. We want to have access to money, but know what the fees are. Be sure to ask that question. If you use a bank that is not in your area, what are the fees? Christian mentioned last week that online banks, they typically waive your fees for the use of ATMs, and that's simply because they do not have physical banking sites. But for those that bank at branches or banks that are local to your area, if you are not using the ATM of that particular location, you could be assessed a fee. So please be sure to know what those fees are because they add up quickly, right? Other things about what to know and what to ask your banker. Deposit times. How many of us think about this, right? If you're taking your check to the bank, does your bank have a cutoff time? And what I mean by a cutoff time, if you deposit a check at 3:30 p.m. on Thursday, does that deposit post so the funds are available to you on Friday? Or does that deposit post on Monday? That makes a big difference. Because if it posts the next business day, the funds are not available to you immediately. So you want to know the cutoff time for when deposits post to your account. Some banks, when I was in corporate banking 25 plus years ago, the cutoff time was 2:00 p.m. So any deposit that you wanted in your account and you wanted it to post for availability for the next business day, it had to be in your account by 2 p.m. on that business day. Ask those questions because that's important to you. You know why that's important? Because it could be the weekend and you may need funds and your funds may not be available to you if you don't meet the cutoff time in making a deposit, which is especially why I encourage you all to have banking accounts, but also set up direct deposit with your employer. That is the easiest way to ensure access and availability to your funds. So choose direct deposit option, provide your routing number and your account number to your employer. And again, your funds are available immediately. Very different from an actual physical check. Don't get into the business of check cashing, getting into the business of paying fees to cash your check. Open up you a bank account. Other things you want to be ask about is ordering checks. I know a lot of people are saying, oh, what would I ever need a check for? I'm not sure, but you may. You may need a check. And if you do need checks, order checks, but please keep checks in a very secure place because that is a financial instrument that can do you a lot of harm if someone else gets a hold of your checkbook. So you do not want to have checks laying around. Know what debit card replacement fees are. Oh, we all do it once or twice, 5 or 6 times, lose that debit card, right? But a lot of times there's a fee to replace that debit card. It's not that you're not going to replace it. Just know that there's a fee associated with it and know what that fee is. And then you may want to talk about overdraft protection. We talked a little bit about that, right? So how can I possibly avoid some of these overdraft fees? Or a check clearing my account that I forgot that I wrote, or a debit card transaction that, I would like to swipe my card for. Well, then maybe there's an option for you to attach a savings account to your checking account. Or maybe there's an option for maybe a small overdraft protection fee type of account that the bank may have. Sometimes they have small accounts that attach to your checking account. It's a loan account. Hear what I said. It could possibly be a loan account if it's not your own funds. And you would then be responsible for paying that overdraft protection plan back, right? So keep that in mind. But again, I encourage direct deposit if that is an option with your employer. The guarantee of funds and the availability of it, it just works very well with most young people. It's the guarantee of the funds being available to you, because sometimes you have to be, the other question you have to ask is if you choose to deposit a physical check, they could likely hold your check. They could likely hold your funds. And you want to know if the bank holds the funds, how long do they hold the funds? When do they make your funds available? So there's lots of questions you need to ask. Remember, it is your bank account. You're in control of it. And you can make a choice of where you bank based on asking these questions. That's why it's good to go to a couple different banks to find out what account works best for you. So you are all ready now to go to the bank. It's time to open up these accounts. It's time to take good care of your accounts. And before we go to Q&A, I want to bring one bank to your attention because I'm always searching for a good deal. I'm always searching for good interest rates out there and options for banking. So I discovered in the last few days, Hope Credit Union. Again, I'm not saying that this bank is better than one or the other. This is just another option for you to explore. But I encourage each of you to look into Hope Credit Union. Hope Credit Union has many account options, including the college checking account that I referenced. But there's also another checking account that they have out there that is paying interest at this time. And I know many of you are thinking interest on a checking account. Yes, there are interest-bearing checking accounts. And there's a really good competitive rate out there for this checking account. So if you're interested in just earning a little bit of money on your dollars each statement cycle, it might be an account that will interest you. Again, I encourage each of you to understand what the terms of those accounts are. All accounts have terms. Again, maybe a minimum balance, but I just really encourage you all to stay away from anything right now that requires you to have a minimum balance, because those are hard to maintain, because it could be that it's a minimum daily balance. It could be that it's a minimum average monthly balance. And so it's just a lot to really think about and worry about when you're already trying to manage your budget in a way to really make ends meet anyway. So minimum balance accounts may not be an option at this time. So steer away from those. But there may be some other accounts out there that will give you some greater benefits to earn some money, and you can meet those requirements. It could be that it's debit card requirements, a certain number of transactions. Again, it could be that you have to do an electronic statement. Another requirement may be that you have to have a direct deposit set up. So just read and understand what the requirements are. All of these banks that we've mentioned in the past, Ally Bank, we talked about America's First Federal Credit Union. Today we have talked about Hope Credit Union. All of these banks come with full service banking features, access. They come with mobile deposit features, online banking features, including apps that you can use. So you can have your bank right at your fingertips and be able to access your accounts and know what your balances are real time. So I encourage each of you, get prepared to bank, get prepared to choose the right bank that works best for you and your needs. And don't be afraid to ask the questions and get the answers that you need before you open up your bank account. So that's all I wanted to bring to you all today. But if you have some questions for me, if you want to talk about the budget template that was used last week, if you were on the call, we can do so at this time. And if there are any questions, I'll wait for just a few minutes to see if any questions pop up. If not, I will see you all next week. We will have more to talk about, and we will get into loans and how to really assess loan options, understanding interest rates, understanding best practices, even down to thinking about purchasing of cars and such. So I thank you all for your time. Don't forget, register each week at www.rebirthchristian.org/Young Finance. Again, that's www.rebirthchristian.org/Young Finance. Thank you all and have a wonderful evening.